Is there such a thing as being too authentic? And should you be that authentic on social media? Well, today we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more with a good friend of mine. Let's do it.
Salon owners are some of the most amazing people on planet Earth. The only problem is sometimes their hearts are so big and they give so much of themselves to their staff and guests that it creates unintended consequences. Our goal is to change the industry by elevating the way the rest of the world sees salons, spas, and barbershops and give it the credibility that it truly deserves. This is the Salon Owner Evo Revo Show.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Salon Scale, allowing you to charge by what you know, not by what you feel. What's going on, everybody? I am Jason Everett, one of the co-founders of the High Performance Salon Academy. Pumped and excited to be hanging out with you today. And apparently, I may have some landscaping going on today. So if you hear some crazy noises, that's what's going on. Landscape rolling through for the wind today. Anyway, I'm excited to be on with you guys because I think this topic is something that a lot of people are unsure about. In fact, I just saw a post earlier this week on social media that said, the more vulnerable and authentic you are, the less friends you have. And I actually disagree with that at a fundamental level. And I think our discussion today will really help you decide, like, how vulnerable should you be on social media? Is that a problem that you have? Are you worried about that? Like, if you represent your brand, you represent your business, maybe you're thinking, I'm not really sure or clear that vulnerability posts are what I need to do. Should I just post about coming in to the salon because I'm having a sale? Well, if that's been a concern for you, do me a favor and say me in the comment section, because I'd love to hear from you. And if you're hanging out with us live, do me a favor and comment live. Do me a favor, please welcome to our show today a client, a friend of mine, Celene Dupuis. What's going on, Celene? How are you?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I am doing amazing and excited to be here.
By the way, Celene is a Redken artist. She also is the owner of Revamp Salon up in Canada. Celene and I have known each other for years and years now, and I'm really excited to have you on the Evo Revo show. So thanks for coming on and hanging out and making time while you were actually on vacay this week.
Yes, glad to be here. I'm glamping, so I'm coming to you from my camper, and I feel like I should just never go home and take it on the road.
Yeah, I watched the whole story of you like redoing your glamping trailer, and it's awesome. And I love that you're just like, oh, I'm gonna get some work done and like go hang out by the lake and then come and do a quick interview. I love it. So thanks for joining me today and just being yourself. And Celene, I think you really like, you have a big personality. You talk a lot about social media, and like a large part of your life is lived on social media, right? Like that's a big part of how you operate. And what is your take on this idea of bringing authenticity into your social media? Why is that such an important thing for people when they're trying to connect with you?
Well, I think especially now more than ever, people are just tired of having fake connections. And I think often what we do on a daily basis is very surface, very fake. We've all heard someone say, how are you? It's like, do I give them the real answer, or like, do they have time to hear what's really happening? So I feel like there's so many cases. I call it the Insta Hangover. So like when you're hungover, there's all these physical reactions you have. And the exact same thing happens from using Instagram or Facebook. And I think until we build a different community that is authentic, we're going to continue to move through our social media usage feeling hungover. And I think that's terrible for our lives.
Right. Well, and I think social media has kind of created, Celene, you and I have been around since before social media and now with some social media in our lives, right? And I think that's one of those things that's really fascinating to me is like when social media first came out, or even if you go back to like pre-internet days, nobody would use their real name online. Like it was like it was this little like, how do you use this? I laughed because I had like a fake name I used for like my PayPal account when I set it up because I wasn't sure if PayPal was legit or not way back when PayPal was started. And so it's just funny to me that like now it's like everybody's dying to get their own actual name as their handle, or some people are like, I'm still trying to hide in it. And I think there's just some questions about how social media works in general is like, what's too much information to share? What's too authentic? What's too vulnerable? And do you like it? is there a line for you in your mind? I mean, like, I can't imagine you're on posting about marital arguments you and Mark are having about something, but like, I haven't seen that. But like, help me understand it. Like, how do you define that line of like the authenticity that leaks into your personal life versus not? What's your take on some of that?
Well, I feel like so many of us will do on social media what we wouldn't do in our real lives, right? Like there's all these
Mm.
keyboard warriors. And my
Or
take on
like
it, I think it's
blasting people.
yes. And I think my
Yeah.
take is that just like real life, I mean, I've been through a ton of trauma. When somebody dies and you're going through something profound, you get to the point where you have two choices. When someone says, "How are you?" you can be the
Mm-hmm.
person that always is depressed and has a terrible
Mm.
story, or you can be the
Mm-hmm.
person that says, "You know what? It's tough, but I'm moving forward."
Mm-hmm.
And which one you choose is going to depend whether people want to talk to you anymore. So
True.
you have to find a balance, and you also have to find a community where you can really share the real story, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's not the time or the place to get into it. So I think we have to figure out how to make social media more like that, so that we
Mm.
can learn how to wade what is too much, when is the time. And if you're going on to rant about something or somebody, maybe that's not the time. But if you want to bring light to an important topic and share your personal experience, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? Is like I think to what you were saying is like if you're just gas lamping somebody and you're just like blowing them up and you're trying to, start a fist fight basically online, like different conversation. And again, I've had that moment where it's usually at the grocery store, right? You're at the grocery store and they're like, "Oh, how's your day?" And you're like, "I know you could care less. Like this is just the utility of like I'm a human interacting with another human and I have to have this conversation." And so you just got to decide, like, are you going to break the pattern? Or are you going to give them the real answer? And they don't really want to know, like, well, if you really want to know, my car broke down this morning, and no, 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 no. But I will say this, Celene, is that for me, I try to break them out of the monotony of the familiar, right? Is like if you snap them out of that mundane moment when all of a sudden they're like, oh, you were going to actually answer me, like what's the thing I say it every day and I'm trying to remember. It's like out of context it doesn't make sense, right? They're like, how's it going? And I usually say something like rock star or something like that, and they're like, oh, because it's just like that moment they're expecting you to go, fine, how are you, as opposed to just giving you any other answer. And I think sometimes social media, people are looking for that little surprise that's not just like your normal social media post, right? So can you give us some examples, Celene, of like what would be some ways to post about authenticity without venting or without being in that spot that would reveal more authentic you and really kind of be positive for other people?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, topics that obviously are near and dear to me. My husband's in a wheelchair. So we post a lot about spinal cord injuries, and we post about accessibility. So you go to the grocery store and you leave your cart in an aisle or a parking stall, instead of bringing it back. So I could take a picture and blast that person, but instead it's like, what's the point of this message? Am I using it for education? So I
Mm,
would take the opportunity to talk about, what kind of people leave carts in stalls. Like, are you going to find a CEO that leaves a cart in a parking stall? Or like, what kind of person do you want to be? And also, what does it mean when those little things that are mundane to you, what does that mean to somebody else? Like for my
mm.
husband, he can't get out of his car and go grocery shopping when you've done that. So big things, big effect, and really take it towards like education, instead of saying that all people are stupid because they do this one thing you hate. Use it as an educational moment so that you can help other
Mm.
people understand the why behind it.
So I like this idea, and I will say this, Celine. Like for me, and we were talking about right before we kicked on the show. Like there was a couple of posts that I've shared about being bullied, or extra vulnerability posts that I just have shared that have really gotten some good attention. And I think there are people who do rant posts, but I think you always have to take the vulnerability or rants or any of that stuff and turn it into the education. And what I've learned that's probably the most helpful for me, and I'm curious if you've been this, is when I'm the most emotionally charged, that's a great time for me to share something. But there needs to be one layer of filter put on it, which is what's the intention that I'm emotionally charged with. Because if I get on and I'm just pissed to be pissed, and I just get on and I light somebody on fire, like this idiot that blah, 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 to your point, or if I go, okay, Jason, I know you're fired up right now. What's the lesson you want to walk away with? And I give myself that moment to just say, like, I think there's an important lesson in here that I need to learn, and hopefully somebody else does too. If I can get myself out of the emotion just enough to get the lesson, I find that that's the most valuable post. But I do look for those moments when I'm emotionally fired up. It's almost like that, like, you used to say, like, count to 10 before you send an email where you're fired up about it. And now people are doing that crap on social. You got to take at least that that like 1 second hesitation and ask yourself a question. Do you have any questions that you ask yourself, Celene, before you post, or like things that you kind of get yourself in check to make sure that it feels right to you when you post on social?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, anybody who's taken Little Voice Mastery knows there's an exercise where you're really trying to figure out what the actual emotion is. So, like, why does that make me so angry? Like, is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it fear?
Yeah, what's the actual emotion?
So, yeah, so identifying what the emotion is, and then, like you said, what's my intent? If I post this, what's my intent? Is my intent to make somebody else look bad, like a business or a person? Right.
Yeah.
Or is my intent education? And so once you figured that out, I think it's just really structuring it. I think there's a term going around right now called toxic positivity. And if you don't know what that means, it's like everything's going to be okay, like good vibes only. Well, I mean, if your mother just died or something just happened, like good vibes only is like off the table. So I think that we need to recognize that you can't like glaze over and candy coat these deep emotions that people are feeling. We need to, you talked about this, Jason. It's like get into their world first and like feel what they're feeling and make that connection, because if you're feeling it, other people are feeling it. And then how did you deal with it? What was the solution, and what can we learn from it? And I think that makes it a lot more authentic. And it's great for your followers to know that not everything's okay all the time, because I think we look at the people we admire, and this is part of the instant hangover. We start to compare, and that creates jealousy. Like, why is Jason on a boat every weekend? Why does Jason have this beautiful house in California? We don't know that maybe, Jason has real things going on in his life, and that he's sad too, and he deals with things too, and he has problems too. So being able to create that connection makes you more human, not just someone that like has it all together, because Instagram allows us to portray that.
Right. Well, it's really easy. And I think so many times, and by the way, I hope this is helpful for you guys. If this has been helpful, if you're getting some good insights, do me a favor and say insights out of this thing, because I think, to your point, Celene, it's very easy to just say, hey, here's me at my very, very best. Here's me after a photo shoot. Here's me after this. Here's me after that. And I have no problems in my life. And it becomes this fake existence. And so what I want to talk about when we come back, because I got to take a quick break here, Celene. When we come back, I want to talk about what are some good posts. And then here's the other question. This is good if like you're a brand yourself, but I want to talk about how do you do this as a business? Because again, what business wants to promote themselves and say, oh yeah, here's how we screwed up that client experience yesterday. Like, let's talk about how to take authenticity into a business setting besides just as an individual. And let's make this really kick over a notch here, Celene. I think this has been really good so far. Super grateful. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
Hey, HPSA listeners, let me ask you this. Are you tired of not knowing what your hair color is costing you on every appointment and watching it chew up your profit? Well, with Salon Scale, we take the guesswork out for you. Using a mobile app paired with a Bluetooth scale, Salon Scale will tell you exactly what your color is costing you on every bowl mix down to the gram. As you mix, Salon Scale will also digitally store your formulas and track how much product is being used in real time, so you can manage your inventory, cover your expenses, and generate more profit in your salon. Use promo code HPSA10 to get 10% off an annual subscription. Salon Scale, the new standard for mixing color.
Welcome back to the show. I am hanging out with Celene Dupuis. What's going on, Celene? Good to see you. Really excited to have you on. We're talking about authenticity in social media. We're talking about how do you maintain authenticity. We've talked so far about, not everybody wants to see just the happy camp version of yourself, the fake version of yourself that's out there, the socially acceptable version of yourself, and that getting people to engage with you and realize that you're a human, that you have flaws and have issues and things. We talked about emotion and how do you use emotion in your social media. We talked about a lot of things around that. I'd really love to find out from you, Celene, because you are like at an influencer level where people see you and watch your stuff. Like I have people who go, "Oh, you know Celene?" It's always a fun. I love when people ask me if I know you, and people are like, "Oh, you know Celene," because you travel and you train, you teach, and you're on the road doing cool stuff. And you connect with people as a brand, but you also own a business. How do you, if you own a business, become more authentic in your presentation of your brand? Because my assumption is you're not necessarily talking about Mark and wheelchairs and things like that as part of your salon brand, right? Because that's a different thing. But like, how do you talk about authenticity in that regard for your team, for the brand of your business?
I think we made it part of our like who we are as a brand. Our goal is to help people feel like the best version of themselves. So that would be our mantra. So subjects that are important to us are body positivity. Beauty is more than skin deep.
Love it.
We really, and it's funny you mentioned this because yesterday we did a post on our Instagram about, not being happy with the results. And one of our stylists had a customer that they had a great consult, but they both had a different vision of what the outcome should be. So the customer wasn't happy. And she handled it the right way, dealt with the emotion, made it right. And this is like a lifelong customer. She did this beautiful post about how, like, stylists we don't start out to try and screw up your hair, but we're human. And so what happens when you're not satisfied?
So good.
And we're creating a safe space where we can talk about that. You can feel comfortable to have your guests say, it wasn't exactly what I had hoped for, and that they know we're not going to melt down and have like I suck at life, I suck at my job, but we can take the emotion out of it and take care of the customer. So that's all in our branding stories.
Well, that's a great example, Celene, is like, being able to have that conversation and just being able to be vulnerable enough to say, here's where we didn't get it right, and here's how we made it right. I think, on a very small level, like I'm just kind of trying to use a big example to relate back to this, is like the fact that most people know that if you get your drink wrong at Starbucks, they will remake it without complaining about it. It's not like they're like going to go, I'm going to spit in your coffee because I made it wrong, and how dare you send it back. They're like, look, if we don't make it right, like we'll redo it for you. No big deal. And I think to your point is that vulnerability to say, we're human. Like, I don't set out to screw up your hair. So if I miss the mark, like, tell me, we'll make it right. And like, if I was looking at salons in your area and all of a sudden I was looking at something going, all right, like, do I want to go to this salon or that salon? Do I want to go to the salon that's going to fake it till they make it and put on a smiley face and like they're going to push back if I do it? Or, and the reverse of that, am I going to find a salon that blasts people for saying, how dare you complain? Because that's what I see a lot of times in working with salons is they're like, oh God, this guest had the most unrealistic expectations. How dare she come back and ask for this? I just told her she can go take her business somewhere else. And like, they blast people on social media. To your point of like, what is it? Is it positive body image? Is it that we make mistakes? Is it that we're human? Like, what is it that you want to be seen as? And you mentioned something, I don't remember how you said it. Did you say brand story or brand? What did you call it?
Yeah, that's like how we would communicate that in our brand stories.
Yeah, it was going to say, I thought you said brand story. Talk to me for a second about how did you decide a brand story for your salon? Because I think that brand story element is something that I think a lot of salons have never even considered.
Yeah, and I mean, the class I teach is all about branding, whether it be for the individual or for a salon, but you have to come up with like what you want, like who is your brand? Like if it was a person, who do you want to attract? And for me, looking at the industry, I live in a small city. It can be very catty, and I'm not interested in playing in that game. I think there's enough business for everybody. And so we really looked at like the beauty industry can be vain. We want to be a safe place place that's comfortable for staff and clients. We want to make people look great, but also we want to make them feel great. And so literally we had our staff write down a list of all the qualities of a place they wanted to work, what was important to them. And then we worked that into our brand and what was important to us and married them together. And, partnering with people locally, we're going to be doing hair for this event called Be Your Own Swim Queen. It's literally encouraging women. And I'm doing it September 19th. It's cold in Canada then. We're getting in the water in bathing suits and having a photo shoot done to embrace our bodies, embrace who we are, and empower all these women. And so it's partnering with powerful local things like this, that is more than just like giving a silent donation, like doing things that are making an impact for women's mental health, and of course men. Our target market is women, but I think that's important.
Yeah. Ron McKenzie jumped on. Hey, Ron, good to see you, buddy. He said, we have a student, because they run a school. He said, we have a student that has missed 2 days now because a customer didn't like her color. And I think it's really, I was going to say, this is really important though, Celene, because as soon as I read that, is that if it's uncomfortable and that isn't part of your brand story, and there's not a policy about making it right, or that's not part of just hey, that's what we do here is we'll make it right. This is the kind of result you can end up with sometimes, is somebody being so panicked that oh my God, maybe I didn't do it right. I know you had a quick reaction. What do you want to say about this?
Well, what I've learned from my associates down is we've actually put a mental health piece right into our training. We actually brought in a psychologist to do a staff session on creating boundaries. And I think the biggest thing is we need to teach these young stylists it's hard, but to separate when you don't nail it out of the park. First of all, if you're looking at yourself, I'm garbage, I'm a terrible hairdresser, you're making it about you, not about satisfying the client. So first of all, thank you so much to that guest for having the courage to let us know, because that's hard to do. Second of all, if that's your reaction, you will not retain guests, because they're not going to feel comfortable, because they don't want you crying in the basement for 2 days, eating all the popcorn and ice
won't
cream.
mention it. Yeah.
They won't mention it because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So I think right from the ground up, teaching people how to respond and react and what's normal, but also acknowledging that it's hard and it hurts. Go home, have your cry. But now let's look at the what and the why, and let's learn how to not do it again.
Totally. Celene, I've always had a policy, just personally, when I started doing coaching, that I said, if I don't get it right, I'll make it right. Right. It's if I don't get it right, I will make it right, in whatever that takes. And it used to be one of those things where, for me, I just was always I've always been worried, if I don't deliver at the level that I need to, I don't want to let people down, because it's my word and my promise on making it right for salon owners. And Celene, if you came in and you were hey, Jason, I thought we were going to do some work together and it was going to be great, and it wasn't, I'd be well, let me figure out a way to make it right, because I want it to go well for you. And I think when you have that attitude of if I don't get it right the first time, I'll make it up to you and we'll make it better. If you genuinely go into it with that attitude, it's less likely you're going to screw up, number one, because you already have said, I'll make it right. Number two is the guest is free, or the client or customer is free enough to be able to say hey, you kind of mentioned if this wasn't good, we could fix it. And then it's no pressure off me. Yeah, I will do whatever it takes to make it right for you. And it just relieves the pressure. And I think you said something about mental health. And I think that's the thing, right? Is people, we grew up in a world that said, if you get it wrong, you're a bad person, right? But at the end of the day, we all get crap wrong every day. I get this podcast gets screwed up all the time, usually by me. And it's something goes wrong all the time. And if you're just obsessed about everything going right, you are going to start to have these mental health things that start to go on because of your obsession with being perfect, right? And I think a lot of that comes around the mental work that you do, the resources that you read about, the psychologist or psychiatrist that you bring around to have those conversations. And it really is this game of mental toughness. And I think you mentioned the very beginning, Celene, this idea around trauma. And if you understand how to deal with the things on a large level, you can start to deal with the things on the small level too, that just happen in your day-to-day. Anything you want to say about the dealing with those and the trauma piece for a sec?
Well, I think it's easy to look at the larger picture. Again, I'm 39 years old and I've experienced mass amounts of trauma. I'm still able to run a business. I'm still able to do my day to day. And some days are really bad and I have to, take a minute. Some days I'm great. And I think the disconnect happens because now we have a younger generation that hasn't necessarily experienced trauma, but
Mm,
anxiety, mental health. And so it's easy for our generation. We have to be careful that we don't do this. For me to say, like, you don't even have anything going on in your life. Like, suck it up and come to work. I'm like, man, my husband was in a hospital for
yeah.
3 months and I was running a business. And I mean, I made it happen, but we can't do that,
Yeah, you
right?
can't compare
Because
your trauma for sure.
everybody's story is different. So I think the big thing is just really setting up a safe space that your staff can talk to you about it. Setting up, the opportunity, like if you're not well enough, like when you're at work, you have to be 100%, trauma, mental health or not. If you can't serve your guest
Be
100%,
there.
you should probably take a mental health day. And I mean, what can we do to support you? So I think
Yeah.
there's looking at that and making it okay for them to recognize that like they can't bring it to work, but it doesn't mean pretend it's not happening. Be honest, tell me what's going on, and let's figure out what we can do for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Well, Celene, I feel like this topic, we could have a whole topic on mental health again with you soon because I think it's a really powerful subject. But I love the idea of this authenticity in your personal brand, also in your salon brand, and just being able to be vulnerable enough to have that conversation because it does change the depth. It does change the access, and it will help people make a deeper connection with you besides just a, hey, how's it going? Or you're the place that I get my hair done. So thank you so much for being vulnerable enough to share some of this with us and talk about it. If you found value out of today's podcast, do me a favor and comment value in here. Celene, thanks for taking the time out of your glamp vacation to come and hang out with us. We'll have to have you back on the show again soon. Looking forward to seeing you the next time we get to hang out in the academy. And thank you so much. Give Mark a big hug for me. Tell him I said hey, and enjoy the rest of your trip. Thanks, guys, for
Will
hanging
do.
out. See you, Celene. Bye for now.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening to the Evo Revo podcast.
Today's podcast was brought to you by Salon Scale, allowing you to charge by what you know, not by what you feel.
Please subscribe, leave us a review, and you can always get more information, including show notes and the video episodes at evorevopodcast.com.